Alright guys, so let's get back into our Raspberry Pi tutorial part 3. In this part of the video, we're going to go over how to set up our Raspberry Pi for remote access. The new Raspberry Pi, since they've become so popular, don't come with SSH automatically turned on anymore. So we're going to have to enable that so that we can use our MacBook or remote desktop application. Hi dog, you're getting in my shot. Or remote desktop application to log into our Pi. So let's get started with that. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to want to do is go up into the terminal, and we want to run the command sudo raspi, R-A-S-P-I, -config. This will open up our settings menu where we can go into our network options. This is the place where we're going to want to, oh whoops, I'm sorry, not network options, interfacing options. Now, there are two things that we want to enable here, SSH and VNC. SSH is what allows us to remote access the terminal, and the VNC is going to be the remote viewer. SSH and VNC are the two that we want to enable. Let's go ahead and say yes to SSH server be enabled. Okay. And then go back into your interfacing options and do the same thing for VNC. Yes. Okay. Now, this is the last time we're actually going to be using the Raspberry Pi as it is hooked up with all these wires. From now on, we're just going to be using these interfacing options to control our Raspberry Pi remotely. So, let's get into how to do that. Oh, first, before we get into how to do that, if you remember from the last video, we do need one more thing, and that is going to be our IP. It's always going to start with the numbers 192.168. You may have some different numbers on the end there, but this is going to be the IP that we use to log into our Raspberry Pi. Alright, so now that we have our interfacing options turned on and we have our Pi's IP address, let's start with the simple version. Well, for me this is simple. I feel like a lot of people aren't comfortable with the terminal, but to me, this is the simple version. We're going to type the command SSH pi at our IP address, which is 192.168.1.0.140. Okay, and then we're going to be prompted for our password. Type that in, and boom, we're inside of our Pi as root. Now, I don't know if you guys are very familiar with the terminal, but basically we are now inside of the Pi, and we can type commands like ls will tell us what's inside of this directory. We can type pwd, which stands for print working directory. As you can see, we're in the /home/pi directory. And we can traverse directories with the cd command. So let's say I want to go down into desktop, which is where I'm going to be doing most of my stuff on the desktop. And now you should be able to see if I list strings, I have one folder called raspi car, and there it is. So let's also go into that folder there, raspi car. So now we are inside of the folder, and this is where all of our work will be done. Now, if we want to move back a directory, we can use the cd command with a ... and that'll take us back up into our desktop. If we wanted to create a new folder, we could use the command mkdir, whatever your folder name is. Let's call it test folder. Now, if we do the ls command, which stands for list strings, it'll show that we now have the car and the test folder. If we want to delete that folder, we can use the command rmdir test folder. Now if we list again, it's gone. We can use the nano command to create files. So we could do nano test.txt. That'll bring us into a place where we can start typing, either some code. We can make a Python script, JavaScript, whatever it might be. Right now I'm just making a simple text file. Use Control X to get out of there. Press yes if you want to save it. File name to write, just press enter. And now if we list strings again, we can see we have our test.txt. We can go back into it and see if all of our stuff is saved, and it looks like it is. We can edit it, so on and so forth. If we wanted to delete this, we could use the command rm test.txt, and now we've gotten rid of it. So that's a little bit of the basics of how to use the command line. If you had your Pi plugged into a screen, you would actually see these files and folders popping up and popping off of the screen as we type these commands. So it really is controlling the Pi directly. Another option for logging into our Pi is actually using a remote desktop app. I already have mine configured here, so I'm just going to show you how easy it is to log in. All I had to do was double click and it automatically entered my password and all that, and this is our Raspberry Pi, same thing as we had before. We've got our Raspberry car. Yeah, and this is going to be good if you're not very comfortable with the command line, kind of like a desktop interface. Another convenient thing about the remote access, or the remote desktop access, is that you could use this on Microsoft and Apple as well. If you wanted to access the terminal with a personal computer, a Microsoft computer, you'd have to download an application called PUTTY. I don't have PUTTY, and I use my MacBook for SSH, so I won't get into that, but I will leave a link in the description below for how to download PUTTY, and it should be pretty self-explanatory. So, now that I've showed you how this works, let me show you how to set it up. So, if you don't have any desktop set up, this is how it will look. I'm using the Microsoft Remote Desktop app. So let's go ahead and add a desktop. We are going to start with our IP, which is going to be the same as before, 192.168.0.140. User account, we're going to create a new one, just so I show you what it is. Basically, this is going to be your username and password. Username is by default Pi, password will be whatever you changed it to. And this is just going to be my test. I'm going to delete this after the fact because I already have my user account set up. We don't really need to worry about the groups. Don't worry too much about these extra options. They shouldn't matter. Let's just add this and see how it works. And boom, there we are. We're back into our Pi. So I hope that was pretty easy. Accessing our Pis remotely shouldn't be too difficult. Alright guys, that's it for this video. In the next video, we'll start writing our own Python code and get comfortable with the different types of outputs we can send with our GPIO pins. See you guys then!